All right. So, point blank question I want to ask. Anton, Corey Holcomb, you are familiar with that beef. Corey Holcomb did a live talking more mess about Anton, brought up the alleged mistress, brought up his wife, and he also brought up his underage daughter, who is about 14 years old, put her picture up, called her ugly, and was saying a whole bunch of other derogatory things. Anton, in turn, went on his show the next day and said that he now has to most likely put his daughter in therapy to make sure she's not psychologically or emotionally damaged. He may have to send her home from school just in case she's going to be bullied or made fun of or people talk about her, because these teenagers, they're on their Snapchats and social medias, and they have access to stuff like this that go viral, especially if it's somebody they know. She may be teased or talked about behind her back. The words he was using: psychologically, emotionally damaged, canceling trips they had planned. Does the parents, one parent, both parents, or the child in question itself has grounds for a civil lawsuit?
Well, the parents would have to file it as the child's next best friend. I think that's the terminology. And I don't know whether they'd have a case or not. It depends upon where the case was brought, and what the grounds are, and what the circumstances are. So, you know, um,
It may not be a criminal.
insults are permitted, but insults that have no basis in truth are not. Those become defamatory. But when you have a defamation action, truth is always an absolute defense. But again, people are public figures or they're not public figures, and that's governed by New York Times versus Sullivan, U.S. Supreme Court, 1962. I don't know what the jurisdictional or venue parameters are. I have no idea. And it's a bunch of foolishness. By the way, who's the one that has the daughter? The guy in the black hat or the one in the white hat?
Black hat.
Okay, so it was his daughter. Well, I thought he won the debate, but, such as it was. But I'm not surprised. I think it's in poor taste, but whether or not it's actionable is going to depend.
So so this is what I'm saying. So he puts her picture up there, slanders her. She has nothing to do with nothing on social media, nothing with her father or this man's beef, nothing. She's innocent. She's probably unaware that they even had whatever, right? To a certain degree, unaware. You put her picture up, she's a minor. And this is YouTube. So it may not so
Well,
much.
look. What I'm saying. Let me just. It makes no difference right now unless it's in the right or wrong place. Like California has a thing about body shaming. Somebody took a picture of somebody, a grown woman who was not physically attractive in a locker room situation. And this was a California case. The aggrieved person who didn't think it was appropriate, they won. But in other places, it might not, because other folks, other jurisdictions don't recognize concepts like body shaming. If you're fat and you look ugly and you're out of shape, you're fat, you look ugly, and you're out of shape. Uh, Other jurisdictions say if you point that out, even if you're being truthful, it's actionable in the state in question. So it depends. Like I said, I don't know what state they're in, where it's going to be brought, or what the.
So let me give you a little bit of those details. So Corey Holcomb, he's in the state of California. When he made those comments, it was in the state of California, in Los Angeles to be exact. Anton Daniels, he lives in the state of Michigan, Detroit, Michigan to be exact.
I don't know. Those two states seem to have escaped the corral of typical American law, but no telling where they've gone. So it might be interesting. It might just be a hype to get viewing audience or followers or support for whatever they're doing, since they are money-making propositions. See, news started going bad when it was broadcast as a primary focus of the institution. CNN started that, and it went downhill from there. When news was a public service thing that studios and networks were required to do as a matter of public service, it was treated as something of objectivity. Leave the editorialization to a network editorial, and then our job is just to be objective, if we can be so, in reporting what is going on. And the news typically was 15 minutes in a city like New York or Chicago or Los Angeles. And if anything exceptional came up, they would interrupt ordinary broadcasting or regularly scheduled broadcasting, I think the phrase was, to bring you the latest. But they didn't focus on it. It was only after CNN and then others started doing 24/7 news that they needed something to fill in the boring moments. And talking heads back in the 90s used to be the way, and they'd blather on inanely for a long time about stuff that was highly speculative. George, what do you think was happening? I don't know, Al, but maybe what's going on is this. Well, George, that might be right, but how about this? Well, Al, that's a good idea. Maybe that's what's going on. See, in other words, it's blathering. And now you have the equivalence of, what is it? The View and stuff like that. Not necessarily The View, but things like that are on these news stations 24/7, and they fill up the time when there's nothing newsworthy out there. So I don't know. It might be just an effort to generate business.
Legally, though, because this is for people.
I don't know. It depends on where you're going to bring
Let me
that.
ask you this, though, as a legal expert, would you ever recommend someone who is in the public eye, social media, YouTube, it doesn't matter, to talk about someone who is under the age of 18, especially if they're not in the public eye, in a negative way like that?
I don't know. Maybe the under 18 person has been engaged in criminality, and I think there is much to be said for not sheltering a juvenile who has been charged with a grievous crime. I had that when I got the youngest person in the world on a death row off with a unanimous decision by the Arkansas Supreme Court 40 years ago. He was supposed to have killed 3 people when he was in the 7th grade. And it made national news services, so people were covering it. I remember when somebody came from Italy to cover it for one of their national magazines. So, yeah, everybody knew the juvenile's name.
Well, so just swinging it back to Anton Corey, if he wants to sue him, it would be a civil lawsuit. That doesn't mean he'll win, but anybody could sue anybody.
Yeah, that's basically it. And what happens depends on where you bring in the lawsuit and what your grounds are, because on civil liability and what is looked at as a civil wrong varies from state to state. As a matter of taste, I think it was uncalled for. And if you're talking about the guy in the white hat, I thought a lot of what he did on what I commented on, which was basically the guy in the black hat, I think won the exchange with what I was shown. So other than that, same thing.